get started in Dharma talk, please join me in invoking the Buddha's name 3 times. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Cynthia, can you go upside? Someone there. Can you open the door? Someone was at the door. Okay, so today we're continuing on the Lotus Sutra, the Sadharma Pundarika Sutra. We are in chapter 7, the parable of the Phantom City. So the chapters 3 through 9 are all parable chapters. So all the storytelling in those chapters are of parables. And so in chapter 7, it's the parable of the Phantom City, which is relatable to almost every single person that this world has, Buddhist or not. And this is why. So in the chapter The Phantom City, the Buddha gives a story of a group of people who are basically on a treasure hunt or a scavenger hunt, and there's this well-knowing guide that is guiding them. And they're on this long trek of 500 yojanas. Yojana just means a very long distance. So they're on this journey to this treasure mountain, called Treasure Mountain. But not even halfway through, the people get weary and tired, and they want to go up and kind of just complain that they should just stop and turn around because they just don't have the energy, they don't have the effort needed to continue on. So the guide, being a pretty smart fellow, creates an expedient means and invokes this illusionary city, this phantom city. So it's a fake city, basically. It's an illusion, a mirage of some sort. But within the city, there are good food, there's drinks, they can bathe, they can sleep, they can rest, etc., etc. And so the travelers take their time and stay at the city, right? They regenerate, they re-energize, they get their rest, they get their fill of food and drink, and they're just having the time of their life. And then eventually, the guide is like, okay, it's time to go. Y'all are well rested. Y'all got your food and drink, and you bathed, and you slept, and you had your fun. It's time to continue on. But the travelers, being very content in where they are, being happy with what they have, and what they were able to consume and have, essentially said, no, we're good. We want to stay here. This is a pretty cool place. This is what we want. But the God had to remind them that they were on this journey for a reason. They had a finish line that they need to reach. And that this place, this momentary comfort zone that they're in, is just an illusion. It's a phantom city that was invoked, that was uninvoked. That's the word I'm looking for. Created, I don't know, whatever. But this place is illusionary. It won't last forever. It eventually has to crumble, has to disappear, and it'll go away. And so the true treasure that we're looking for is still beyond. So we still have to continue on. And so this parable was given because if we recall one of the main teachings in the Lotus Sutra, the Buddha teaches on the 3 vehicles, right? The 3 types, or 3 categories of practitioners: the Shravakas, the Pratyeka Buddhas, and the Bodhisattvas. The Shravakas are the voice hearers, which is pretty much all of us, right? These are the monks, nuns, laymen, and laywomen. Prateka Buddhas are the solitary enlightened beings who have attained full enlightenment, Buddhahood, but do not wish to teach. And the Bodhisattvas are, of course, those that have attained a level of enlightenment but vow to stay back in the cyclic existence in order to help all other beings attain enlightenment first before they enter nirvana. And so this parable is given because the practice of the first two vehicles, of the Shravakas and the Prateka Buddhas, they only have a small enlightenment, according to the Buddha, meaning that their nirvana is small. Their nirvana is simply to satisfy their own satisfaction of enlightenment. And because once they reach nirvana, like if the Shravakas for us, if we attain arhathood, which is full enlightenment, right, you've entered nirvana, that is it. There's no coming back, there's no rebirth, there's no more suffering. But just because you take yourself out of the equation of the bucket of suffering, that doesn't mean there's still suffering, doesn't mean there's not more suffering left in the bucket, right? You've only taken out one weed out of an entire planet of weeds, right? And so there's still suffering there. And so the Mahayana, our tradition, right, because we emphasize the Bodhisattva ideal that we all need to become enlightened, not just for ourselves, but for all other beings as well. And so when we become enlightened, or at least reach a level of enlightenment sufficient enough, then we use those abilities, we use those skills, we use those teachings in order to help others attain that same enlightenment or beyond, right? So they can attain Buddhahood, and they can read and they can teach, and there's the domino effect there, right? But because the Arhats and the Prateka Buddhas have this small enlightenment, right, just for themselves, because they are satisfied with what they have. They're satisfied with the nirvana that they have. But there's still the rest of all sentient beings left. And so the difference between the Theravada tradition, right, which is a southern tradition of Buddhism, is that their highest attainment is the Arhat, right? And it's only exclusive for monks only, for monastics. Whereas in our tradition, the Mahayana, the northern tradition, we have the Bodhisattva ideal. And so our goal is not to just become enlightened, because we, of course, still want to become enlightened. But when it happens, when it happens, that we take a vow, we make a vow to return to this existence, this cyclic existence of life and death, in order to help others become Buddhas as well. And only until all sentient beings have become Buddhas and fully enlightened, where we release that vow and then enter nirvana as well. And so the Buddha used the method of the three vehicles on purpose. Right? Sometimes a lot of people wonder, why didn't he just teach Buddhahood from the very beginning? Well, when you're 2 years old, you have no capability of attaining a PhD degree, right? We're still dumb. We're still babies. We don't have the ability to learn that type of information. And so we have the levels of schooling, right? You go to elementary school, and then we go to middle school, then we go to high school, and then if you choose so, you can go to college and beyond. There are levels of education because as human beings, we have to have that separation of type of learning. We have to have that separation of the ability to learn and attain and retain information and knowledge. And so we can't just jump unless you're a genius, right? You can't just skip 10 grades and get a degree. And so in modern times, I can say that the Shravakas and Prateka Buddhas are just high school graduates, right? Because when you graduate high school, you're done with your schooling technically. You're not required to go to college, College is not a requirement. Some places may require a college degree, but for your own personal sake, you may not need or want to have a college degree, right? You're satisfied with a high school diploma or equivalent, whatever. And so that's the mindset of the Shravakas and Pateka Buddhas. They got what they wanted, and that's all they need to satisfy themselves. Whereas others who feel more ambitious, who have more goals in life that they want to attain and succeed at, decide to go to college and get a higher education, right? They're not really any different. They're still going to live their lives. They're still going to make money. They're still going to take care of themselves and their family. So there's really no difference between a college graduate and a high school graduate, except for that degree level. And so when we go to college and we attain that degree, right, we get a higher education, we get a bachelor's degree. That's great. At that point, you may want to stop and go on and live your life and have your career. Or you may decide to go back to school again and get a master's degree or get a PhD degree, right? And so these levels are not just there to be there. College is not there just to be there. Some may think it's a scam sometimes, but it's a different story. But there's a reason we go to college. There's a reason we go to school. There's a reason that we want to learn, because learning, having that knowledge, gives us more opportunities to succeed in life. It gives us more knowledge, and that knowledge turns into insight and wisdom, and we have a proficiency in a profession or a craft, right? And so when the Buddha uses the example of the three vehicles, it's essentially saying that same thing. The Shravakas, or the high school graduates, the Pateka Buddhas may get a bachelor's degree, and the Bodhisattvas attain the highest level, let's say a master's degree. Buddha, how do you get their PhD level? So ironically, there's the exact amount in numbers for each, but that's the point. The other point of this story, of this parable, is the inability to encourage ourselves to go deeper into our practice, to learn more into our practice. Whether you consider yourself a Buddhist or not, whether you consider yourself a Christian or a Muslim or a Jew or whatever it is that you consider yourself in life, a lot of times people will get information, right? Maybe you just go to temple once a week, church once a week, whatever it may be. That is enough. That satisfies you. You don't care to read more of the Bible or the discourses. You don't care to do more community work or church work or whatever it is, right? There's no need, there's no need for that. You're already a good practitioner of your respected religion, and you plan to go wherever you go after you pass away. That may be enough for you. But on the other hand, there are people who want more than that. They want to do more for themselves, for their community, for their establishment. And then there are those that may start a new journey, and they get all excited, they get all happy and anxious about this new endeavor in life. But then halfway through, they're like, they slow down, they procrastinate more, they read less, they practice less, right? And so the motivation that we initially felt in this new endeavor kind of starts to dissipate a little bit. And that happens to almost anything and everything we do in life, right? Every time we start a new job, we're excited about it. We try to impress our boss, impress our new coworkers, do all this, go above and beyond. But after a while, we're like, I'm just here to get a paycheck, right? Never, right? Nobody does that. Of course not. It's blasphemy. But it's the same thing with anything else in life. Literally anything. Pick anything in your life that you had bought or received and recognize how your relationship with that thing changed. Right? I use the example of a new car all the time. You get a new car, it's all fancy, shiny, smells like new car. You're taking care of it, you're cleaning it every other day. You're picking up every little hair and crumb off the chairs and floor. But after a month or two, it looks like you live in your car. Right? And so that motivation, that encouragement, that happiness that we get from these initial new things in life disappears. And the same thing happens with our spiritual practice as well. I'm very much guilty of that. Before monkhood and after monkhood. Being a monk is not easy. It's very difficult. Because it's difficult, there's times where I just get demotivated. It's like, I just don't want to do this anymore, right? But then I have to remind myself, I took vows for a reason. I'm here for a reason. I attained something that brought me here for a reason. I gave the example yesterday during meditation class, many, many years ago. This is probably, what year are we in? 24? It's about 10 years ago, 11 years ago, when I did my second, or maybe my first, it's probably 12 years ago, sorry, in 2012, I did my first long-term retreat. It was 3 months, Thailand. Very hot, I don't recommend it. But that was my first real retreat. And the retreat was taught by a very famous Thai monk who was teaching on the jhanas. The jhanas are these high levels of meditative concentration that are extremely difficult to attain, more difficult for lay people, unfortunately, because it requires many, many hours a day to practice. But anyway, the point is I started out on that retreat very excited, very happy to be there. I'm like, I'm here to learn new stuff. Hopefully I'm here to learn new techniques. I can half understand what's going on between the translator and the people that are there. And I remember the trip that I went on, I went with 7 people I just met that was going also. Only 3 of us lasted. The whole retreat had about 40-something people. At the end of it, I think there was only like 14. And so at least half of the people that started out on that retreat left. They gave up. But I was determined. I was like, even though I wanted to give up like 2 weeks in, it was very difficult. At 0, you literally got like 3, maybe 4 hours of sleep every night. Because you wake up at 3 a.m. and you go to bed almost around noon, almost midnight. And so with little sleep, I was like, I just cannot do that. I love to sleep too much. I can't. So I almost gave up, but I was determined not to, because I made a commitment to be there, and I made a commitment to myself to do this work. So through those 3 months, I didn't attain jhana. I did get very good at meditation, but I did not achieve what I wanted to achieve when I got there. It was only 2 weeks before this retreat ended where I attained jhana. 2 weeks. I was like, really? Really? So 2 weeks later, the last 2 weeks is when that happened. And I was like, I think I did it, but then I had to go. And usually when you have attainments like that, you have to go to your teacher to get kind of like verification, right? So when it happened, it was at that moment, after the verification, after the retreat was ended, and I came back, and that was the year, that's when I first started coming to this temple. It was in 2012. But it was also that was also the same time where I made the commitment that I'm going to be a monk. One of these days, hopefully in this lifetime, if not for sure the next lifetime, but I hope in this lifetime. I made that commitment because even though I was very discouraged in that practice, and I was doubtful of my ability to do what I came there to do and do what I wanted to attain. But when something like that happens to you, when that spark of aha sparks in you, right? It's a feeling that is more joyous than I have ever felt anything else in my life. It is better than any sexual encounter you'll ever have, better than any food you'll ever taste, better than any destination you'll ever go. When that type of attainment happens, it honestly feels like you're on this beautiful sunny beach. There's a warm air, there's fragrant smells, everything looks good, everything tastes good, everything smells good, everything is just good. It was such a beautiful thing. I literally cried. I'm not even kidding you. I cried because I was like, what is this? where does this come from? Is this what it's supposed to be like? Is this what happiness is supposed to feel like? You know? And so it was such a intense experience where I was like, I have to do more than this. And so I made a vow to become a monk. 5 years later, I did it. Woohoo! And of course, you know, during that journey, I had a lot of obstacles in front of me. And those obstacles were hindrances in my ability to ordain, because there are certain requirements that you need to have and certain responsibilities I need to give up and have, and et cetera, et cetera. So all those obstacles were, again, another discouragement in my practice. I was like, oh, this is never going to happen. So kind of depressed for a little bit. And then other things happen, and one obstacle gets removed, and another one shows up, and there's always this back and forth. So for about 5 or 6 years, there's all these obstacles. I'm just waiting for the right time. Eventually, I gave up. I was like, you know what, just forget it. Next life. So every night when I was chanting and meditating, I made the vow that in my next life, I was going to become a monk. Right? But one day, miraculously, I wish I can recall the exact moment. I don't remember where I was. I'm almost positive I was at home playing with my dogs, and it just kind of, something happened. And I was like, you know what, I think it's time. And so I asked our teacher, and I had a conversation with him, and went over everything, and he was like, yeah, sounds like you're ready, let's do this. So 4 months later, shaved my head, came here, been here ever since. Yay for me. Thanks. So this discouragement in our practice is something that I hear a lot of people say and complain about. And it's not invalid, okay? Don't think that just because we're complaining or we're discouraged about something that we're doing in life means it's not the right thing to do. Sometimes it is. But when it comes to our practice, and I'm going to try to stick specifically to our practice here. When it comes to our practice, because Buddhism is extremely vast and comprehensive, there's a plethora of teachings, right? We have tens and thousands of sutras, of discourses. There's no one book like a Bible, right? We don't have that. We have thousands and thousands and thousands of discourses. And so it becomes very overwhelming to be like, where on earth am I supposed to start? Like, what do I pick? What do I choose? And fortunately for you, and fortunately for me, we have a temple, we have a teacher, and we have guides that can help us on that path. But imagine you didn't have that. Imagine you're in a remote location where you didn't have the ability to be able to attend a temple, to be able to practice with a sangha. And so people become very discouraged, and they kind of give up, or they don't do their best. They meditate maybe 10, 15 minutes a day, every other day, or when they feel like it, and kind of just roll with the waves as things happen. Now, for those of you that know me and have heard my Dharma talks over the years, you know that I'm pretty, what's the word I'm looking for? I practice tough love. I give my students tough love for a reason. I do that because all of us has the potential to become enlightened, which is literally the moral of the story of the Lotus Sutra, is that we all have the ability to become enlightened, regardless of who, what, or where you are in life. If you look at our statues, for instance, right, and the reason even though there's too many statues in here, if we're being honest, but the reason I love these statues is because if you look at them, and the statues are here for a reason. They're not here to be worshipped or bowed to, because we don't care about that. They're hollow. These are not real beings. But they're here to remind you of the practice. And so when we look at the statue of the Buddha, who looks glorious and humble and content and compassionate and just has this glow of enlightenment to him, that in itself should be an encouragement to vow that I want to attain that as well. I went off topic. The point is, of these statues, what is going on? All the enlightened beings in Buddhism, all the bodhisattvas, the saints, right? So all four corners have saints, and the two on the edges, at the ends here are saints, bodhisattvas. But if you look at their features, they're all androgynous. They have both male and female characteristics, right? And because of that, that in itself is a sign that it doesn't matter what or who you are. And in this Lotus Sutra, it teaches exactly that. There's a chapter on how a murderer became a Buddha. How Devadatta, who's the Buddha's cousin who attempted to murder the Buddha several times and thankfully did not succeed, also will become a Buddha. In chapter 8, 9, 11, I can't remember. But the chapter with the little girl in it, what chapter is that? One of those chapters. There's a chapter of a story of an 8-year-old girl who was a daughter of a king. And in that chapter, it was either Shariputra or Manjushri, one of the Buddha's high disciples, and he had a mindset that only highly enlightened bodhisattvas and men can become Buddhas. And one of the other bodhisattvas at the time was like laughing at him, was like, yeah, right, watch this. And so this little girl who's 8 years old appeared, and she offered the Buddha a jewel, right? And then he asked Shariputra or Manjushri, whoever was talking smack, and asked them, how quickly did the Buddha accept my offering? And they replied, very quickly. And then she said, well, even quicker than that, watch me become a bodhisattva and turn into a Buddha. And just like that, instantaneously, she, through transformation, this is of course story, through transformation, she transformed into an adult and into a bodhisattva and then turned into a Buddha. And so she admonished him, saying, your thinking of who and what can become a Buddha is wrong. It's inaccurate. It doesn't matter. Age doesn't matter. Gender doesn't matter. Practice, beliefs doesn't matter. Everybody has the potential to become a Buddha. And so in Buddhism, we use the terminology of Buddha nature, right, which is this intrinsic ability that all sentient beings have, that they're able to become a Buddha. And this is also the same in any other religion, right? The ability to go to heaven and be with God, right? It's kind of almost synonymous with that, sort of. Not really, but kind of. But we all have the ability, regardless of who or what you are. But in order to attain that, we have to put in the effort. We have to put in the work. We can't just come to temple once a week, twice a week, 3 days a week, do some chanting, do some meditation, hope for the best. It doesn't work like that. If all you want to do is attain good karma and good merits so you can have a better next life, then that's sufficient. If that's what you want, good for you. Congratulations. That's all you need to do. But if you want to become more than that, if you want to attain more than that, to become more than that in this lifetime, you need to do more work. So most of my more senior students know I'm very disciplined with them. I'm going to make sure that they get some tough love training, especially those that I see the potential in them. They have the capability of doing something right here and right now. But they have to put in the work. And understand, unlike me, everyone has life obligations. You have work, you have family, you have kids, etc., etc. But that's not a valid excuse. Practicing is not exclusive to coming to temple and sitting on the cushion. That's just part of your routine. That's not the practice. The practice is taking what you learn and teach and practice from the cushion, off the cushion, into your everyday life. Meditation is not sitting cross-legged, with your eyes closed for an hour, or doing walking meditation. That's not meditation. That's part of meditation. That's not all of meditation. What is meditation anyway? Actual question. What's meditation? Okay, what else? Good, what else?
It's the key to everything.
It's the key to everything. It is the ability to be fully concentrated in the present moment, yes. Meaning that being mindful in everything and anything you do. Why? Because anything and everything you do has the ability for you to become mindful. Walking to your car. Do you even recall walking to the temple when you got here? Do you even recall driving? Do you recall how many stop signs you stopped at? How many people you saw on the street? How many new buildings you've seen? No, because you're not paying attention. You're missing the beauty that's in the world because you're so focused on one thing and getting to one destination. You're ignoring the actual beauty in the world. You're ignoring, well, nowadays, unfortunately, we focus too much on the chaos in the world. But this chaos that we have is less than 1% of what's actually happening in the world, what the world actually has to offer. So if you're only focusing on chaos, you're missing out on beauty. What's going to help you more in life? The chaos or the beauty? Hopefully not chaos. Even though sometimes chaos can be fun, but it's beside the point. And so anything you do with mindfulness is meditation. So when you walk back to your car today, be mindful of how you walk. Be mindful of where you walk. Be mindful of how you're walking. Be mindful of the feeling that you sense in your feet as you walk. Be mindful of the sun on your face. Be mindful of the breeze. Be mindful of the smell. Be mindful of the sounds that you hear. Be mindful of things that you see. I guarantee you, even if you've been here for years, I guarantee you, if you go out and become mindful of your walk, you will notice something new that you've never seen before. I guarantee it. But you don't because you're not mindful. You're not focused. You're not aware of what's going on. So you're missing out on the natural beauty. So when you're driving, if you're driving defensively, that's being mindful. If you're cooking mindfully, if you're cooking with mindfulness, then you're cooking a good meal. But if you're distracted and you're multitasking, you're going to burn the food. If you're having a conversation with someone, if you're not mindful of what they're saying, because a lot of times when people are talking, we're not really listening. We are reacting. Why? Because we're already thinking of what to say back, what to reply back, how to retaliate. If someone's arguing with us, we're not actually listening to them. We're already thinking of what we need to say in order to defend ourselves because they're insulting us or they're calling us names or whatever it may be. Right? We're not listening to them. We're already retaliating. That's not being mindful. It's being hurtful. And so just keep in mind that whatever you do in the morning, and especially in the morning, because we have such an automatic routine that we get up, brush our teeth, we have breakfast, we shower, and we leave. All this is so routine that we don't even know we're doing it. Do you remember waking up and putting your clothes on? Do you remember getting ready? Do you remember how you felt, what you were thinking when you're brushing your teeth or taking a shower? Unless it was like a big mental conversation, then you probably don't. But even the most mundane things like brushing your teeth or changing your clothes, if you're being mindful of that, it's such a joyous moment. You can enjoy that mundane task. It's not a chore. It may feel like a chore because you feel like you have to do something. But every chore can be a fun time. Maybe not every chore, but most chores can be enjoyable, regardless of the mundaneness of it. In Buddhism, for monastics at least, we have 52 gathas, or 52 little mantras that we say for the different activities that we do throughout the day. So when we wake up, there's a mantra we recite. When we put on our clothes, there's a mantra we recite. Put on the robe, there's a mantra. Brush our teeth, there's a mantra. Take a shower, using the restroom, cooking, walking, cleaning, changing the altar, fruits or flowers. Everything we do is a mantra because it helps us focus and ensure that our practice is being aware and mindful of what we're doing. It's a lot of work. And early on, when you're trying to be mindful of everything you do, it's going to be very exhausting, okay? I won't lie to you. It's going to be exhausting because you have to really force yourself to be mindful. But eventually, that mindfulness will become more routine. It'll be a habit. You no longer have to force it. It'll just come at will, right? So don't expect changes overnight. Maybe a month or more, depending on how well mindful you stay. But that is the moral of the story of this chapter. Is, again, I'm sticking with this with our practice. In your practice, if you feel like you're unmotivated, or you feel like you've attained what you believe is enough, if it's not full in alignment, it's not enough. I'm going to tell you that right now. Meditation, of course, helps a lot. Almost every time when we restart our meditation class, in the very first class, this is why I scare a lot of people away, but in the very first class, I'm always telling people, if you're here to alleviate your stress or your anxiety or depression, this isn't the place for you. I can't help you with that. That's not how I'm going to teach you. Because those things like lessening your anxiety and stress and et cetera, those are byproducts of meditation anyway. They are going to happen regardless. If we correctly meditate correctly, those things will naturally happen on their own. You don't have to force yourself to meditate to ease your anxiety. It's going to happen. And so when I say that, people are like, oh, well, what am I doing here? I teach Buddhist meditation. Meditating to ease your anxiety is a healthcare issue for most people. But that is a byproduct that happens. Anyway, back to demotivating. If you find yourself questioning your abilities, for instance, which is, especially in meditation practice, it is difficult to gauge. Sometimes it's difficult to gauge where we're at in our practice, in our meditation practice. Because there are only a handful of sutras, discourses in the Buddhist canon where meditation is even talked about in detail. And I've said this yesterday, is because at the time of the Buddha, meditation was a common practice, right? And so he didn't teach too much on meditation because everyone knew already how to do it. So there's not very many discourses on meditation. And so we only have a handful of them. The two most important ones are the Anapanasati Sutra and the Satipatthana Sutra. The Anapanasati Sutra is the mindfulness of breathing. The Satipatthana is the 4 foundations of mindfulness. This time around during our meditation class, we're teaching on the 6 gates to the sublime, 6 Dharma gates to the sublime, by Master Chi Yi. He's the patriarch and founder of our Tiantai tradition. He's also a highly realized meditation master. And he wrote this text, Sublime, specifically as instructions, as an instruction manual to meditation. And he made this instruction manual and he gave the 6 gates because each gate, as he was teaching, he gave you specific practices to do and specific areas of recognition where you can kind of gauge where you're at. So if you succeeded doing this, this, and that, you've mastered this one gate. Now you can move on to the next, right? There are specifics in there, so it helps you gauge where you're at and where you need to be and how and where you need to go after that. Whereas in traditional text, there's none of that. There's just this lump sum of instructions and what to look for and how to do it, but that's it. There's no details on how to say, okay, I've achieved this, I've done that, I've realized this, etc., etc. Okay. Oh, wow. I've talked more than I thought I did. I'm going to stop talking. I'm pretty sure we have a long chant session. Are we on 6 or 7? Okay. questions, concerns, emotional outbursts? Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so from what I'm understanding of this, the parable of the phantom city, basically, it's like don't be fooled, right? It's a mirage. You get there, they find everything they need that covers the water, the food, the rest, so forth and so on. And in our meditation, it's kind of the same, right? So don't be fooled by like you're progressing enough, right? Always keep in mind of what the real goal is, right? But in one of the things you mentioned was the bodhisattva, which is, you make a vow to come back and so forth and so on. Are bodhisattvas aware that they're bodhisattvas? Is it something like it's just unconscious, or do you know? I mean, is there something? Is there able to recognize? Because I'll tell you what, a lot of stuff that I remember thoughts that I had when I was younger, and they're very Buddhist. I thought I was crazy back then because they didn't fit in the world, but now I'm like, oh, So for example, like I never was attached to my things, and I thought it was weird because I didn't care if you stole it, I didn't care if you took it, I didn't care if it broke, and I thought that's strange. Well, how can you not care about your things? But is that possibly, do you carry over something like that? Do you know? I guess it's a big question.
As a bodhisattva, so when you die as a bodhisattva, you are reborn, but you have to re-bodhisattva yourself. So you have to re-enlighten yourself. But it becomes easier the next time around. And every time it happens, it becomes easier and easier and easier.
You recognize the path,
Right.
You recognize the truth, and you're led to Buddhism earlier.
Correct. And so a bodhisattva will always recognize another bodhisattva. An enlightened being will always recognize another enlightened being. Right? That's the only way. Because one of the four cardinal sins as a monastic, right? We have 200, as a monk, we have 250 vows. The first four are the ones where you just absolutely cannot break. The other ones are forgivable, but there's four that if you break any of them, you're defrocked as a monastic. But the fourth of the four is lying or showcasing abilities you do not have. Attainments you do not have. Correct. And so if you go out into the world and someone's saying, oh yeah, I'm a Buddha, I'm enlightened, I'm an Arahat, they're just psychotic. An enlightened being will never confess that they're enlightened. Why? If you confess that you're an enlightened being, then people are going to want to come and worship you and revere you, et cetera, and then you create a cult. Right. Right. Another thing is that when you practice and attain jhana, for instance, right, there's 8 levels of jhana. But even at the first level, you reach a state of, what is it called? A state of no awareness almost, right? People mistake this for nirvana all the time. All the time. The 2 other Americans that were with me on this retreat made that confession. Like, oh my God, I don't remember the conversation. But I was like, I don't know about you, but I'm just happy. Like, no, I think we've reached, I think I'm enlightened now. I'm like, yeah, you're not. But after verification, they were not. But the point is there are points where something can happen and you're mistaking it for something else. And because you're mistaken, you're going to make these proclamations and make these claims that you're this or you're that, you've attained this, you've attained that. So typically, regardless of how much you know, you're not, who are you to showcase that information?
Teacher, I was more referring to, like, do you carry over the lessons? But you answered me. You said you recognize it.
Right. You won't know it. You won't know it as it is, but when you go back to it, you'll recognize that this feels familiar or feels easy, right? So think of anything in your life. Think of something that you're good at, for example, that you were always good at, right? You're not just born good at painting or drawing, right? And so there has to be a kind of a past condition, right, for that to have happened.
I can peel potatoes like nobody's business. I have to have been a sailor in the past.
You must have been like a potato farmer or something.
I don't know. It's not the best talent.
That explains why you make really good shepherd's pie, which, by the way, I want another one.
I did have one other question that's not as long.
Okay.
So the second thing that you mentioned with or part of the talk is basically, so I'm sorry, right? You get anything, you grow weary of it, you get tired of it, and so on. You know, and you mentioned distractions or, family life or just different things, right? And not to lose your motivation. And, to overcome it. Does that, not just, you were speaking of it in the practice of the meditation and so forth and so on, but as far, because I get a lot of obstacles, like when I try to come or try to do something, I feel like I get a lot of, they didn't make it. They somebody that was going to do something to make sure I got here, my car fails, whatever. So I feel like there's a lot of obstacles like that. Does it present itself that way as well, as, to keep your motivation because fly through it?
Those obstacles are also your teachers. Because if there's an obstacle in place, that means you have to work around it. And in order to work around it and figure out a new solution requires patience. And anything that allows you to practice patience is a good teacher. Joseph, you have 1 minute. Sorry. No. Maybe. Sound hearers. You hear the sounds. Well, sound hearers literally mean, especially back in the Buddha's day, it was called all the disciples were called Stravakas because they were hearing the voice of the Buddha directly. And so now, unfortunately, since you don't have the Buddha, but you have teachers who represent the Buddha's teachings, kind of emanating the same thing. So as a monk or a nun or whomever, as children of the Buddha, we're just reiterating the Buddha's voice in our own time. I'm not going to Leon first. Leon.
Just was wondering about, it sounds like we're talking about conditioning, or psychological conditioning.
Mm-hmm.
We're not aware of real conditioned state. Is that the ego that protects that? So in other words, I get angry because I don't think my meditation went well, and this Buddhism's crazy, why am I even doing this? That's the ego talking to ignorance, correct?
Correct. It's trying to control you from doing something. It is your Mara, right?
To keep the conditioning intact.
Right. So the ego that's trying to stop you is your Mara. So if you remember the story of the Buddha when he was under the Bodhi tree, and right before he was, when he was close to enlightenment, he was visited by Mara. And Mara was trying to throw out all these distractions, all these beautiful things to distract him, to persuade him to not become enlightened, right? So he was thrown these beautiful sensual pleasures, these good foods, these, heavenly looking women, etc., in order to persuade him, like, you don't want enlightenment. Enlightenment's not good enough. You want these pleasures in life. These are better. But he was diligent and fought through that because he knew that all this stuff is temporary. All the good food you have, your relationships, your likes and your dislikes, all that stuff is temporary. Eventually it will be gone or change. Anything that has the ability to be gone or change is impermanent, regardless of what it is. And if there is any ounce of change or impermanence in something, it will never bring you lasting happiness. Enlightenment is the only thing that will last. You cannot take that away. Cynthia.
Can karma prevent you from...
Yes.
Because I think that a teacher told a story.
Karma is your... karma is your gasoline to your rebirth vehicle.
Its very nature.
Right. So if you put in more gas in the car, you can get farther to your destination. If you don't put enough gas, then you can't get very far at all. If you put the wrong gas, then you're effed, right? Like, you're not going anywhere at all. And so, good karma creates good results and merit. And so, being here, just being at the temple, allowing yourself to be open-minded enough to hear me speak and give you a Dharma talk, you're already accruing good karma. By listening to a Dharma talk, right, which is one of the benefits in the Lotus Sutra. It's by listening to a Dharma talk, listening to the sutra, reading, reciting, copying, and teaching, right, are the pillars to gaining large amounts of merit. Which we do at the end of our chant, right? Transfer the merit to all sentient beings. But that doesn't mean you're giving it away. You're sharing it, okay? Which is why it's called sharing the merit, not giving the merit. You still keep some of it. Correct. Because there's not a good example, because there's nothing in real life where if you break it apart, it stays the same size. But think of karma as sharing the merit as you get a piece of merit and you share it, right? You break off a piece of it. But the original merit does not change in size. It maintains its wholeness, but you're still able to pluck pieces away from it and share it. This is more... Perhaps. Okay. All right, well, we'll go ahead and transfer the merit so we can get to chanting. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha Namo Shakyamuni Buddha Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. For any positive karmic action we've accumulated here today, we wish to transfer the merit to all sentient beings and wish them full enlightenment. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha.
all from